Okay, thank you for joining us.
Well, again, I am starting. It's always complicated, but I am King Uluki of an original tribe, not just one original tribe, but the original tribe of the earth. And a lot of people struggle with the terminology of being a king, and for some reason, people don't accept that we had kings and queens here in this country. And have some crazy idea that we're a collective that operate on a collective level, but collectives need a head. Every tribe is a head. There's a hierarchy in every system of nature, and the black tribes here were no different. And they're not indigenous tribes, because indigenous means living but lacking spirit and consciousness. That's what the word means. So, and Aboriginal apparently means third party in its origins as well, which I've just recently found out. So, when regards to the black people of this country, like yesterday, I had this man ask me, he called me a curry, and I said, no, the curries don't come from Victoria. It's a word from the north that was brought down during the protest days down here and the rally days. But I said to him, to call someone a curry down here, you might be insulting them or calling them shit, because the word may mean to have a number two down here. In some of the languages, that's what it does mean. You go to the toilet, do number two. So I explained to him about where the word comes from, and he said, but what do you call yourself? I said, I'm a black fella. And he smiled at me. I said, that's because you're a white fella, aren't you? And he said, yeah. I said, well, that's what we are. You know? And we can't let someone else's ideas force us into calling us things that we ain't, like indigenous. It's an insult, really, to the human spirit to be called indigenous. And as far as kings and queens go in this country, in 1997 I was lucky enough to end up in a desert with basically the greatest secret keepers in the Australian tribes. They're out in the desert. Mainly the Arunta are the secret keepers. Anyone around them, not so. It doesn't matter what tribe comes from where, they have to accept their own place. But out in the desert, they'll even hear some of the tribal representatives during the invasion time travelled out to the desert and taught song and stories to the people out there to keep, like a library, because they knew that they'll be able to keep that information intact in the more remote regions. So up there they got song and dance that belongs to my people here in the Yarra Valley. And so in the Yarra Valley is a specific tribal lands, and the tribe is called wurrung. Wa is raven, and wurrung is people, so raven people, or the blackbird tribe. But that tribal lands went all the way down to almost into Melbourne, out there. But what's happened in recent decades is all these corporations have sprung up and claim to be the tribe. So the tribes that claim to be the tribe of Melbourne is actually nothing but a corporation. And that's not even the original name of the tribe, and none of them people come from Melbourne as a whole. But when I was out in the desert, I became a driver for a Kadachiman. And a Kadachiman is another word for shaman. And so I was driving this guy around, and we ended up out of his community, and his community was called a Mugana. And it was somewhere out towards the Alice Springs Airport, not far from there, this community. And as we got out of the car, we walked in and he introduced me to all of these young women and kids and dogs around a fire, like a big fire, and there was young people everywhere. And then the old boy, well, back then he was old to me. He's probably only a couple of years older than what I am now. So, but he would have been mid-50s, and I was 24. And he said, you got to come inside and meet the old people. So when I went inside in this house, in this commission house out in the middle of this savannah, out in the desert, and there's just bricks and concrete floor, and it's just raw concrete, not even sealed, no carpet, nothing for the people, just open concrete. And fences, like urban settings, like I tried to fence the mentality of people and get them urbanising themselves. So he said, come and meet the old people inside. So when I walked inside this house with this Kadachi man, there were two old people asleep in swags on the lounge room floor on the concrete. And he woke up this old man who would have been late 80s or early 90s. And when he woke up the old man woke up and looked up at me, and the Kadachman said some words in language to him. And at the end it was, this is Brendan from Cold Country. And this old tribal man just looked at me and snubbed me, just looked away. And the Kadachi man there said, don't worry about him. This is not his country anyway. They went over and woke up this tiny old lady who was in a swag asleep. They got silver hair and she like real tiny. They woke her up, and when she rolled over and her eyes opened up, and the Kadachiman spoke in language to her and introduced me as Brendan from Cold Country, from the south. And then this old lady went on a rant for about 5 minutes, and every now and then I could hear my name, Brendan, put into to what she was saying in her language. When she finished speaking, she just went quiet, shut her eyes and went back to sleep. And the Kadachiman just looked at me. And he looked at me different to what he looked at me before we walked in the room then. And so the Kadachiman said to me, he said, and that woman laying there asleep, she's the queen of all the desert tribes. She's the queen of all these tribes here. This is her country. And she said, now this is your country. And you're welcome to come and go from this country as you wish. And then she said, in fact, no tribe can say no to you. That you are welcome in all tribal lands of this country, and no one is allowed to say you are not welcome. Because they would be lying and deceiving themselves. And that was from the queen of the desert, a real queen, not Priscilla, not the other one.
Yeah, amazing.
But so a lot of the so-called learned folk, the academia nuts, it's in macadamia nuts, so I call them macadamia nuts, who think they know stuff and they go spend years at university studying and out in the field studying. But when they go out into learning from the ancient tribes don't trust them. So they teach them children's stories, and they come back with children's stories and write it down like it's creation stories. But they don't trust anyone out there in the desert. You've got to have a certain spirit and past too, because they can read your past, the old people, so they know how much you've suffered for a great truth. If you suffered for great truth, they'll just load you up with all of their secrets too, because they know you're not going to go out and sell it. I'm not going to gurunize myself by selling information. It's not for sale, it's free for everybody.
Beautiful.
More great knowledge should be presented free to the earth.
I love that.
And I can't get paid for it, and I can't sell it for that, because then I would be corrupt in thinking that I could do that.
we got you here today just because we want to just share a bit of your message and guidance to the world. A lot of people are struggling at the moment with what's happening, and it's a hard time, and I think a lot of people are getting like pretty stuck, you know. People are protesting, but they don't think, you know, it's really doing much, and at the same time they're losing their jobs and, you know, so I think it would be nice to sort of know like what impact we could have, or like sort of what we could do just in our daily lives to make a difference in the world and sort of combat this gender on an individual level, rather than, you know, going to these protests that don't seem to really...
How does one hold their own in such a mess?
Yeah, make a difference in a way,
And I guess the main thing is to stay positive no matter what. Because these events are made to break us and keep us thinking negative about each other and the world around us. So just to stay positive and hold space for yourself, and hold space for others who can't hold their own space just yet. You know, other people need help in their fields, because the fields are so messed up, like energy-wise. There's a disconnect between the spirit and the body causes illnesses. So, but as all my philosophy from the past is to never hate the world for what's happening, and never hate anyone for what's happening. Even those committing the crime, we can't hate. Because we will become them. We will become criminals for hatred.
And that's what
hatred
they want.
Makes us. So it took me a long time to understand what love was. And I've heard all of these sayings, and I've heard people say I love you, but the experience wasn't there. I wasn't experiencing that, I wasn't witnessing it. They were just empty words, and everyone chucked the word around so much. It was become too easy. But so after many decades of realising many teachings and talking to people about it, that, you know, when someone told me that love has no enemies, and that done my head in for years, because I tried to analyse it, process that stuff, like in here instead of in here. When you process stuff in here, you know, it gets messy. And it's like pulling apart a car that you don't know how to put back together, and all you're going to end up with nuts and bolts everywhere. And no car. No purpose for the mess it made in your head.
So what is the best and highest thing like any human could do right now for each other and in service to Mother Earth and for the greater good?
Love.
Love.
It really is to imagine. Like you said, it took me years to understand, comprehend. But if I am to understand and stand beneath anything, I will stand beneath love. So I shall understand love.
Beautiful.
None of us are above it.
Nice.
So if we do stand beneath anything, it's love. So it's sort of a follow-up from the last.
It's a follow-up question,
So years I struggled with the idea that love has no enemies. I figured hate is the obvious enemy. Thinking. Stop thinking bad. But then I realised that love can't have any enemies. It's impossible for love to have an enemy. Because hatred stole all the enemies anyway. Because hate is the enemy of everything. So they've got all the enemies in their playground. You know? Love is playing on its own. It doesn't have an enemy. Because even if love hates its enemies, it's no longer an enemy. It's just a sadness that love has to live with, like a sad heart because of the enemy is lost and broken within themselves, and they can't rise above themselves and attain love and light, integrity and truth in their lives.
I think that leads on really well to this next question. So I've heard you speak a lot about thinking with the heart instead of the mind. And just wondering if you have any sort of tips on how we can think with the heart and how we know when we're thinking with the heart instead of the brain or the mind.
That's a tough one. That's actually, it's a good question. A tough question. My own journey, I was lucky because I got actually kicked out of my head and sunk into the rest of it by a natural process. But it took years of suffering and years of defending that truth, even though they weren't mine to defend, or seemingly weren't mine to defend. It isn't great truth everyone's to defend. And the truth is, it's not perceptional either. Truth has a side. It's polarized. And through the process, through my teachings with my teachers, I learned not to take things too personal. Sometimes I fall and feel human enough to take something personal, because it is the human condition that we defend ourselves when we feel we've been attacked, even though seemingly the attack might be just nothing but words of truth and love.
It's the ego.
And those who hate,
yeah,
that's an attack.
Yeah.
To them. But love has no enemies. It's the ultimate power of all things.
The ultimate shield as well. Yeah.
Power, it's a weapon.
And through love, we can raise our immune systems.
Yep, our vibration, our immune systems, and our karmatic responses from the universe as well.
Yeah.
So I guess people should be questioning to themselves, what is love and what love kind of means.
Yeah,
and explore
what
that.
does love represent in their lives?
Yeah.
Or how do they represent love
in
their lives? Like, instead of saying what love represents, maybe, but what do they represent as love?
Yeah.
And then to bring in the unconditional love rather than conditioned love that they get conditioned in high school, primary school.
Yeah.
Well, a famous man once said, "Love thy enemy, but do not treat them as your brothers and sisters." Again, throughout history, all of the great quotes from great people have been edited by the evil in the world.
Yeah.
So Christ said that.
Okay.
Love thy enemy, but by no means treat them as your brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
But it still is a segregation in the way we treat each other. I love you, but I'm going to beat you if I see you growing up.
Yeah.
Hold them to account.
Yeah.
Hold them to account. Forcing responsibility and accountability to the God.
Yeah.
That's why the politics became so bad, because people are so happy to give away actually they'll get rid of it very quickly, their ideas of accountability. By voting for someone else. Take that accountability.
And blaming the other person.
So when voters come at me, I simply say, hang on, did you vote in the last election? Yeah. So who'd you vote for? Dan? Well, you need to have Dan come and speak to me, because you gave him your voice, so be quiet. So you need to send me your representative. Who is that, Who did you give your power to?
Yeah.
So you gave your voice away, so be quiet. I didn't give my voice away, so I can sing freely.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Excellent. If we could get you to talk about the cleaning up of the world, and where to go from here in the crossroads that humanity is in right now. Where do we go from here in regards to cleaning up the actual world?
Well, as we all starting to see and feel now, feel more than anything. Feelings are more real than what we see in here. Because there's feelings that actually move us energetically and move our spirits. Very rarely do what we see and hear do that. So we know that feelings are real and they're not just a fluctuating emotional state within us that's only within us and not affecting anyone else. And that it's all interconnected. That's it's a complicated question
Yeah.
with even more complicated answers with simple values and simple system to enact it all. Which means that so many answers humans won't like. But sometimes I have to give people a disclaimer, so be careful what question you ask me because you may not like the answers. So the cleanup is when cleaning house. It starts from within, cleaning your own house. Which is you and your, ask your guys to help come in and clean you up energetically and mindfully. So to help clear our consciousness so our subconscious can better pick up intuitively the world around us.
And what would be some techniques to be able to do this, to clear the vessel, raise our consciousness?
Well, drink good water and bless the water before you drink it.
Yep.
Make sure it's clean. And don't let dirty energy around you dragging your fields down or poisoning your energy fields too. But there's a place and time for everything, and the people will see that in the world soon.
Yeah.
With the cleanup, there will be a war, a great war, and our earth is yet to see the darkness too.
Wow. It's a bit
That's
scary.
what they've said. So the epitome of darkness is going to rise. We have to be able to, we've got to be ready to deal with it, combat it on every level, spiritual, physically, and socially.
Yeah.
On every level, ready to counteract that with the utmost of power and integrity and less harm to the world. So people who don't have the stomach for war will be given sanctuaries to live in and protect.
Okay.
Not everyone has there are only certain humans of the world who have a stomach for this type of thing. And that's their road to redemption. We have to allow their road to redemption to play out. As well as someone else's road to redemption may mean someone's redemption may be to plant a heap of trees. Because they were loggers once.
Yeah.
So we can't stop them from redeeming themselves. It's the same with how people perceive violence. And if people choose that their journey is to go after and kill the evil in this world, utilising violence as the tool, then we must accept their redeeming path and not judge them evil when they come back from war, like soldiers do.
Yeah.
You know? Soldiers are put in some very precarious, nasty situations. And they're heavily traumatized because of that. So they come out of war and then they come back to society and get judged for that.
They're already carrying the burden of it too.
Yeah, they've always got enough burden on their shoulders and
Yeah.
societies, like what happened in Vietnam when they come back and the Australian public spat on them.
Yeah.
That's a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And no one should spit on anyone for any reason.
Yeah.
Unless you're paying for it. Spit on me, baby. But so we must allow everyone to be themselves through this whole process. That way that's the only way we get to shine fully in our own glory is by being our true self.
Yeah.
We can't do it by hindering ourselves by worrying about the judgment of others judging us because their judgment says this idea is wrong, but I think that idea is right, and end up all this confusion and stuff.
There is no right one way, for everyone it's going to have a different path. And
An interesting conversation, an interesting defense I actually had to have once when I come into attack at a school, at a black college. I got invited out to this Aboriginal college in the Yarra Valley to go to this event by two white boys, because the blacks didn't want me there, but they didn't like me pointing out the crimes I saw being committed by all these corporations and a whole lot of criminals doing crimes, people, no more. But, so I'm in this room with a guy named Jason Rennie who took me there. And this guy used to have teepees down at Lannister Farm in Alpha, and had a teepee village up here and business hills as well. Him and his brother picked me up. They took me to this event. They wanted to introduce me to a man named Jalu. And Jalu's family from Yirrakala in Arnhem Land were apparently the original bloodline that played the Didge, or their bloodline is Yirrika dreaming. And so we go to this school, and we get out of the car and we're going into the complex, and there was two full-blooded boys from Arnhem Land, and they're looking down their noses at me dirty as I walk past, because I'm mixed blood. So full-bloods can be very racist. There's black supremacy in some of the tribes here. And for some silly reason, people used to say to me, that's reverse racism. But no, that's just racism.
Yeah.
Nothing reverse about it.
Yeah.
You know? So these two young men were looking at me real dirty down their noses as I walked past. So I just ignored them. I went inside the building. I got these cheap, crappy cookies and cheap, crappy coffee that they gave the people there. Sitting at the table talking to these two young hippie fellas. Next minute I heard my name bellowed out across the room, and there was kids in this room, and ministers from the government, and teachers and artists and all kinds of people. Next minute I heard my name bellowed out across the room, and it was Brendan Murray, like this. And I look up, and here's this guy who I've never met before in my life, walking over like this. Brandon May, I've heard many bad things about you in front of everyone. But just yesterday I heard something good, trying to be a big shot. I looked at him and said, how was so-and-so? Straight away I said her name. So I knew who would have said good. So I mentioned her by name. I said, how was so-and-so? Just me knowing her name, that screwed his head up. And I was trying to be all secretive. And I went, like, who are you? And he didn't bother looking down at me. I was sitting in a chair and he was standing over me. So I'm sitting there looking up at him, and he turns and answers the room. He says, I'm Baxter, I'm the principal here. Looks back at me like it was like a rapper. You know? Like he was talking to the audience and not interacting with me, engaging with me. So I'm Baxter, the principal here. So I sat back and I said, Baxter, do you know the difference between right and wrong? He adjusted his suit, turned to the audience, again didn't answer me, didn't want to actually converse with me. So he turned and answered the room. He said, right and wrong is purely perceptional. Looked back at me like, take that. And I said, well, no. I said, Baxter, right and wrong is divided by the ending of a product or situation being negative or positive for the greater number of people. If it's positive for the greater number of people, it must be right. If it's negative for the greater number of people, it must be wrong. And if you or no one else in this room can see that dividing line, I shall draw it in the sand for you. And I could hear, that was in Hillswood, you could hear a rat fart in Geelong. That's how quiet it was in that room. And they really didn't know how to deal with that comment. And he was about to blow his lid. His face is going all red, he's looking at the audience, and he couldn't have a comeback. That's what he's trying to do. Some people listen. And while they're listening to you, they're creating a comeback. But they actually haven't heard all you said. They listen to reply. Instead of listen to absorb. And actually communicate. communication is about absorbing the information and internally processing it to a degree where you can get some sense out of it.
Yeah.
But I sit there and talking to people, and as soon as I get the glazed look, I start talking about shit that's crazy as fuck.
Yeah.
And they're going, yeah. Yeah. I said, did you just hear what I said? What? I said, I just said this, and this, and you nodded and agreed with me. Oh, I don't agree with that. No, you did. So what happened? What part did you phase out? You're not listening anymore. They've got to tell people, hey, you with us?
Yeah.
Stay with the program, people. Don't fade out, because the knowledge been spoken is adverse to what you think you know.
Yeah.
It's a great deeper sense that a lot of people out there with their cups full, their cup of knowledge is full. You can't put nothing in it. They walk around spilling their cup of knowledge everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell people my cup is never more than 51% full. And I cap it at that number. So when I get more knowledge coming in, I get a bigger cup.
Yeah.
And just keep 51%. There's always 49% potential new information to come in.
Yeah.
The gate's already open for it.
Yeah.
It's already open for that information to come in.
Just heard you talk about trauma a bit, and the fact that we have a lot of trauma, a lot of people carrying a lot of trauma, and the world collectively is carrying a lot of trauma. Do you have any sort of tips of what to do with our trauma?
So last year there were some really crazy events with me and the angelic body and the spirits of creation. But we'll leave the spirits of creation aside for now in that story.
Yeah.
But in July, early July or late June, I was at a location, a private property here in the hills, and I was visited by two angels. And I was in a vehicle, and as they're standing there, because there's no, when these kind of beings are present, it's hard, the rest of the place just disappears in a way.
Wow.
It becomes not real. And I can't describe what they look like. I can picture them and draw them in my head. There's no words that describe their presence. And when I realised there was these two beings sitting there, and I was like, okay, well, what's going on here? And it turned out there were two angels of sorrow, and shared sorrow that they had absorbed out of the earth, contained within them. And between two of them, they said they contained all the sorrow the earth had experienced. And they gave it to me in one moment last year to experience it. Like in one moment, I experienced all the sorrow of the earth. And it nearly killed me. Like I fell out of the car, like a fire hose, I was crying that much. And I couldn't stand up, I was laying on the ground trying to crawl. And I just couldn't stop crying and sobbing. And I went crook. And I'm like, what? Why did you do this to me? Why would you do such a thing? And I said, you can't be complacent. You need to be reminded of what this earth needs less of. And not only am I taught what it needs more of, I'm also taught what it needs less of. In order to get more, you must cut away. So it's like the cup of knowledge here.
Yeah.
I tell people, just empty out that cup a little bit so I can put more knowledge into it. And it's not my knowledge, it's universal knowledge. That's why it can't be bought or sold. And so empty out some of that knowledge. But the trauma, getting back to the angels, our creation has gifted us great beings who can absorb that trauma. It's up to us to release it to them. So all the trauma that we had, and it's okay to delete stuff. That's why I don't agree with regression therapy, because what all you're doing is you're taking someone back to relive the cause of the trauma. And I know that in the psych industry, that's what they like.
Yeah.
They like to revisit the trauma.
Yeah.
You're looking pretty well today. Just having regressions. You're looking very happy. What about this time when you got raped? Yeah, that's regression therapy for you.
Yeah.
They're memories we don't need, because the whole earth won't ascend while everyone's harbouring traumatic memories, you know, inside of us. So the creation has provided angels that burn like fire.
Wow.
And we must, and the analogy or the parable would be to cut away the dead wood on our tree of life, which is us, and throw it into the eternal flame, which is these angel flames that will burn that trauma and take that trauma away.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
And delete it from our presence.
Yeah.
So we have to be ready to let that go and then
Let
call
it
upon
all
them.
go, yeah.
Call upon them.
Yeah, and let them take it away. And they're all over, ready to do it. And one of the key things is for everyone just to stop fooling themselves on a daily basis.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people fool themselves and lie to themselves every day. And,
Yeah.
you know, like everything's okay when they know it's not.
Yeah. Got to be ready to face the darkness within yourself.
Yeah.
Face the shadow.
Yeah. Don't seek the light, don't stand in front of it, but stand in it.
Yeah.
And try to be it.
Love
Be
that.
the light.
Yeah.
You know? Because you don't cast a shadow when you be the light. When you seek it and face it, there's still a shadow that follows you around. And if it's following us, that means it's in the past. It means it's a memory of trauma. We have to allow ourselves just to release it all and, you know, forgive those who done it to us. Not for their sake, for our sake.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Whatever happens to them, that's their journey and their karma.
That's beautiful.
But we must let things go and encourage others to do so. So, you know, we might work out how to develop a process soon where we can have mass groups just let stuff go.
Wow, that'd be powerful.
Come together and all cry together.
Yeah.
And release the trauma through crying ceremonies.
That's a good eye. That's very good. For,
To purge, because out of the tears come energy that flow. Because they're crying for that. And what do we do? Water is programmable.
Yeah.
We're releasing
Wow.
through the tears.
Beautiful.
So we can send it out through that.
Yeah.
Let the tears fall onto the ground and dissipate. Not that she needs any more trauma. But, you know, all this can cope with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess it's
Love that.
forgiveness is, you know, it's like a breaking the cycle, because, you know, we understand that our trauma isn't our fault, but also the trauma that is given to us from other people, it also isn't their fault. You know, it's all come down the line, probably from somewhere.
A fault's a big word. It is a fault.
Yeah.
It's a fault that we have with us, those lackings.
It's our responsibility to
Like
break
where we draw the line on accountability,
Yeah.
you know, on actions.
Yeah.
We've got to draw it somewhere.
And then when we start, like, because we're talking about it and many are starting to do this, eventually when the ones who have taken responsibility cleanse that trauma and they birth these new children who can be pioneers of the new earth, they won't have the trauma that we did because we've cleansed it.
Well, a lot of people come to me talking about trauma and a lot of stuff that's happening in this country with our people here. And I say, it's okay. This place needed to be invaded because the world had forgotten love and forgiveness.
Yeah.
They needed to come home to get it. This is home for everyone.
Wow.
And for the future generation, we'll know love. Straight, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And you know, coming back to understand the love and the trauma. Being like, I'll be, sadly enough, those who come here and committed all that have more trauma than those that committed those crimes against.
Yeah, right. That makes sense.
Our trauma goes back 4 generations at the most.
Yeah.
And a lot of Europeans go back, you know, generations and a couple of thousand years of trauma. Been coming out of traumatic right through the Middle Ages.
Yeah, wow. Crazy to think about.
You know, throughout the whole Crusades and all of that. You know, we didn't have none of that out here.
Yeah.
So our trauma is very recent.
Very recent.
Yeah, right. Interesting way to look at things.
Yeah.
No matter how dark or nasty things may have appeared here,
Yeah.
our trauma is still less than the rest of the planet.
Yeah.